What if the past wasn't just forgotten, but actively liquidated, rewritten daily? What if the most rebellious act you could commit was simply writing down an independent thought?
And what if, in the end, your deepest love could actually be weaponized against you?
Chilling questions. They really throw you straight into the stark, unforgettable world of George Orwell's 1984.
They absolutely do. It's just instantly recognizable, that atmosphere.
Exactly. And that's our mission today, to take a real deep dive into this masterpiece. We want to unpack its themes, dissect how that totalitarian society works,
Look at the tools of control. Trace Winston Smith's journey, his resistance.
and his despair, yeah. And explore why Orwell's warning still feels so incredibly potent. We'll be drawing on all the source material you've shared with us.
Right. So this deep dive, we'll navigate through Oceania, examine the party's grip on power, on reality itself. We'll look at what happens to human connection.
They wrap up by considering its relevance today, all based on the materials provided.
Okay, let's get into it. Oceania. It's this dystopian blueprint, really meticulously designed for total control.
And the first thing that hits you, the absolute foundation, is this incredibly rigid societal structure. It's not subtle.
No, not at all. And that hierarchy, it's fundamental to how the party keeps its iron grip. So at the very top, you've got the inner party.
The elite.
The absolute elite, maybe only 2% of the population. They hold all the real power, live in relative luxury compared to everyone else, and crucially, they can turn off their telescreens.
Which seems like a small detail, but it's hugely symbolic, isn't it? That little bit of privacy.
Massive, a freedom unthinkable for anyone else. Below them, you have the outer party. This is the bureaucracy, maybe, 13%? And this is Winston's world.
Right. Deprivation is the norm for them. Bad food, cramped apartments, constant shortages, and the surveillance. It's relentless.
Absolutely relentless. Every move, every facial twitch, potentially interpreted as thought crime. Their lives are basically a nonstop performance of loyalty.
A performance you can never drop. And then there's the vast majority. The proles. 85%.
Something like that, yeah. They live separately, largely ignored by the party when it comes to deep ideological stuff. They're seen almost like, well, animals. Too simple for Ingsoc, the party ideology.
The sources mention the party just doesn't think it's necessary to indoctrinate them deeply. Keep them working, keep them breeding.
And make sure they don't develop any real organized political thought. Then they're no threat.
It's quite a strategy. They don't need intellectual agreement from the proles, just compliance and distraction.
Exactly. So their lives are filled with the diversions the party provides: the lottery, cheap films, football, songs, beer. Keep them busy with trivialities.
Primitive patriotism, a bit of flag waving, that's enough. They're watched, of course, but not like the outer party.
No, it's more scattered. A few thought police agents, informers. Not the constant telescreen gaze. Any discontent they have just fizzles out, Petty stuff, not systemic.
And this whole structure, this kind of twisted logic, it's right there in the names of the government ministries.
Oh, the ministries. Yeah. These are maybe the most direct examples of doublethink just built into the world.
You have the Ministry of Truth, Ministry of Peace, Ministry of Love, and Ministry of Plenty.
And their functions, as the outline says, are the complete opposite. Ministry of Truth, Minitru, deals in lies, propaganda, rewriting history.
Ministry of Peace, Minipax, wages perpetual war.
Ministry of Love, Mini-Love, that's the center for torture, brainwashing, making people disappear.
And Ministry of 20 Miniplant manages scarcity and hunger, constantly cutting rations while saying they're increasing them.
It's just this deliberate, jarring paradox. It's designed to mess with your head from the start, to control how you even perceive reality.
It really forces you to accept those party slogans. War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. Not just words, but how the state operates.
And this control is enforced by that pervasive surveillance.
It's everywhere for party members. Telescreens in every room, hallways, public spaces. They see you, they hear you.
And no off switch for the outer party? Ever?
The feeling must just be suffocating. You can never relax, never be truly alone, always performing.
And behind the screens, there's the constant threat of the thought police.
The secret police hunting for thought crime, just having the wrong kind of thought.
They use informers, hidden agents like Charrington, who we'll get to, and they analyze the telescreen feeds. And if they catch you,
you get vaporized, wiped from existence, records deleted, history purged. You never were.
Which creates this intense atmosphere of paranoia. Everyone watching everyone, kids reporting parents. You police yourself constantly.
Just avoid doing rebellious things. You try desperately not to even think them. Winston's initial fear of Julia, thinking she might be sought police.
It perfectly captures that ingrained suspicion. You can't trust anyone.
And then the reveal about Mr. Charrington, the seemingly harmless old shopkeeper with the room Winston and Julia thought was safe.
That he's actually a member of the thought police. It's devastating. It shows how deep the rot goes, how deception is everywhere. Even that little bit of hope for privacy was a trap.
He really subtilizes the ultimate betrayal of that hope.
Absolutely. And this vision of surveillance, though very state-controlled in the book, has echoes today, doesn't it? Based on the material you provided.
Definitely. Orwell's model is overt, political. But the potential for pervasive monitoring feels very current.
The sources talk about diffuse surveillance. It's not just one big brother state watching. It's more complex. State, corporations, social pressures.
Right. It's the data trails we leave everywhere. One source called social networking, participatory surveillance.
Yeah.
We volunteer so much data.
Often without really knowing how it's being used, analyzed. Then there are concerns about phone tracking, even when off, social media checks for visas, apps like FaceApp, and data ownership.
The examples are everywhere. And the sources mention historical government surveillance, too. Concerns about an American Big Brother, for instance. So while the methods differ, maybe algorithms and data brokers more than just telescreens.
The capacity for widespread monitoring and profiling is undeniably real.
And maybe the diffuse nature makes it harder to see, harder to resist. It's often framed as convenience, not control.
That's a key point. It's not always an obvious mood on the neck. It can be more like an invisible web of data collection.
So while Oceania surveillance is clearly political oppression, modern surveillance raises these big questions about privacy erosion, potential control, blurring lines between state, corporate power, and social norms.
It really highlights how the nature of watching and being watched keeps evolving.
Okay, let's shift to the party's specific tools for controlling minds, not just actions. And the first, maybe the most radical, is Newspeak.
Newspeak. Yeah, it's not just a new dictionary. It's a weapon. The party is actively shrinking the language.
Why? What's the goal?
The explicit goal, as the sources stress, is to make unorthodox thought crime literally impossible. Not just hard to express, but impossible to even formulate in your head.
How do they do that?
By eliminating words, especially ones related to freedom, rebellion, nuance, and by stripping existing words of unwanted meanings. Like free, only meaning free from lice, not intellectual or political freedom. Equal, only meaning physically equal, not socially.
Wow. So you limit the tools for thinking?
Precisely. You narrow the range of consciousness. Rebellious ideas become just vague feelings. You can't build an argument against the party because the conceptual vocabulary isn't there. Even saying Big Brother is ungood is crude, easily dismissed.
And this takes time, right? It's generational.
Exactly. Old Speak Our English is still around for now. Party members use Newspeak and doublethink to manage. But the long-term plan, a generation or two, Newspeak is the only language. Then the very possibility of heresy vanishes. The words just won't exist.
Which leads us straight into doublethink, that core psychological tool.
Maybe the most crucial one. And it's way more than just hypocrisy.
The sources define it as willingly saying black is white if the party demands it. But the scary part
is the ability to believe black is white when required, to know it's true, and then, crucially, to forget you ever believed otherwise the moment the party line changes again. It's like conscious self-deception becoming unconscious reality.
Why is that so important for the party?
Because the party's narrative is constantly shifting. Alliances change. Eurasia is the enemy. Now Eastasia is the enemy. Rations are cut, but announced as increases. Doublethink lets members accept these changes instantly, genuinely believing the new reality was always the reality, without any mental conflict.
We see it play out.
Yeah.
Parsons swallowing the lie about the chocolate ration like an animal, completely unquestioning.
Yeah, or Syme, the Newspeak guy, understanding it intellectually maybe too well for his own good. But the really chilling example for Winston is O'Brien.
Realizing that O'Brien doesn't just say the party controls reality, he believes it.
Exactly. He's mastered doublethink so perfectly that the party's lies are his truth. That's terrifying.
And this manipulation extends to history itself through the Ministry of Truth.
True. Its main job is rewriting the past. Constantly. Newspapers, books, films, photos, records, anything that contradicts the current party line gets altered. Winston does this for a living.
The past is a palimpsest, right? Scraped clean and rewritten over and over.
And critically, they never admit any change happened. The lie becomes the historical fact. Instantly.
Why go to all that trouble? The sources give two reasons.
Yeah. The first, sort of secondary reason is to stop people comparing the present to the past. If you believe things were always worse, you accept your current hardship more easily.
Makes sense. But the main reason?
Is to safeguard the infallibility of the party. The party cannot be wrong. It can never admit a mistake, a policy change, a shifted alliance. So if the party says Oceania has always been at war with Eastasia, then all records must instantly reflect that, even if yesterday they said Eurasia. Facts must conform to the present narrative.
This obsession with controlling the narrative, the truth, it connects to Orwell's own life, doesn't it?
Very much so. The sources mention his BBC propaganda work during WWII. He saw the mechanics of state-sponsored information control up close, studied Nazi broadcasts. He knew how it worked.
And his time in the Spanish Civil War was key, too.
Hugely formative. He saw firsthand how history was being written based on party lines, not what actually happened. Different factions distorting facts, inventing events. It cemented his distrust of any ideology manipulating truth for its own ends.
So you have surveillance, newspeak, doublethink, history control. And it all coalesces around one figure. Big Brother.
The ultimate symbol. His face is everywhere. Posters, telescreens, Big Brother is watching you. He's the leader, the figurehead, omnipresent. Yet maybe not even real.
We never actually see him, do we?
Never confirmed. But his physical reality almost doesn't matter. His symbolic power is immense. He's the focus for loyalty, love, fear. Even the hatred during the 2 minutes hate gets channeled through him, or towards his opposite, Goldstein. He is the party, personified.
And one source made a great point. It doesn't matter if he really exists once the psychological virus takes hold.
Exactly. That virus of self-deception, hypocrisy, inability to see opponents clearly. Once that's internalized, Big Brother becomes a real, unquestioned presence in people's minds. The lies people tell themselves are the most powerful.
Winston's final acceptance, his love for Big Brother after the torture.
Yeah.
It shows how horrifically effective that cult of personality is.
It's the end point of the party's project, breaking the individual and redirecting all loyalty to its own artificial construct.
Which brings us to Winston himself, the individual trying to push back, however weakly.
His journey starts quietly, internally. Just this deep frustration with the party's control over everything: thoughts, sex, relationships.
And his first real act of rebellion is small, but huge in that context, starting the diary.
Immensely risky. Just writing down with Big Brother is a capital crime. It's asserting individual thought, memory, against a system designed to erase them.
He also gets fixated on O'Brien, right? Believing he's part of some secret brotherhood.
Based on almost nothing, a glance, a shared sentiment, a dream. But that tiny flicker of hope fuels his early resistance, even though it's misplaced.
He tries connecting with the past, too, going into the parole district.
Yeah, trying to find someone who remembers life before the party, clearly. But questioning that old man in the pub doesn't really work. Collective memory is dissolving even there.
But central to his resistance is just clinging to objective truth, facts, memory.
2 + 2 = 4. That simple equation becomes this profound act of defiance against the party, saying reality is whatever it dictates. He remembers seeing proof that purgy leaders were innocent. Even though he had to destroy the evidence, he holds on to that internal truth.
And then there's Julia. Their relationship is pivotal.
It starts almost as a political act for him, doesn't it? Defiance through sex, hitting back at the party's puritanism.
But it becomes more than that. It grows into real tenderness, a longing for something normal.
They take huge risks for intimacy, find hidden spots, eventually rent Charrington's room, trying to carve out this tiny private space, buying real coffee, sugar, dreaming of a domestic life away from the telescreens.
But their rebellions are different. The sources point this out clearly.
Very different. Julia's is practical, personal. It's about pleasure, survival, finding cracks in the system for her own benefit. She's not interested in overthrowing the party ideologically.
She only cared about the party from the angle of her own life, as one source put it.
Right. Winston, though, wants more. He wants to understand why, wants to challenge the party intellectually, even though he feels doomed from the start. He has this fatalistic streak.
And sadly, that fatalism is justified. Renting Charrington's room, which they knew was madness,
leads directly to their capture by the thought police, led by O'Brien and Charrington himself. The ultimate betrayal.
And that kicks off Winston's horrific journey in the Ministry of Love.
Many love. Where the goal isn't punishment, it's cure. They want to break dissidents completely, change their reality, make them love Big Brother.
The methods are just brutal. Starvation, beatings, sleep deprivation.
And relentless psychological torture, mostly by O'Brien, that famous scene, How Many Fingers, Winston, forcing him to deny his own senses, accept the party's reality.
O'Brien becomes this twisted teacher explaining the party's philosophy. Power isn't a means, it's the end, controlling reality itself.
Reality exists in the human mind and nowhere else, he tells him. We control the mind, therefore we control reality. He claims they can make 2 + 2 = 5 if needed.
And the terrifying thing Winston realizes is that O'Brien believes it. He's not just lying, he's fully assimilated the party's worldview through doublethink.
Which makes the torture even more effective. Winston's spirit is just systematically dismantled. He's forced to abandon truth, memory, everything.
Until the final step, Room 101.
The place where you confront the worst thing in the world, your deepest, unique fear.
For Winston, it's rats.
And facing that ultimate terror, the cage coming towards his face, he breaks completely. He screams it out.
Do it to Julia. Do it to Julia, not me. Julia, I don't care what you do to her. Not me. Julia, not me.
That betrayal. It's the final act. It severs his last human connection, obliterates his individual self, his capacity for love, loyalty, independent thought. Gone. He's cured.
Looking back, the key characters really seem like instruments showing different ways to live or die under this system. Winston's the everyman.
He's our way in. He represents that basic human yearning for truth, freedom, connection. His struggle is the individual against the crushing weight of totalitarianism. And his defeat. Well, it shows the devastating power of that system, the tragic inevitability of losing in Orwell's vision.
Julia represents that different path. Personal, pragmatic rebellion, sneaking pleasure, surviving within the cracks.
Right. But her focus on just immediate gratification, her lack of interest in the bigger picture, shows that kind of personal evasion isn't enough to challenge the system itself.
O'Brien is so complex, the ultimate party man.
He embodies the party's power, its chilling philosophy, its sophisticated cruelty. He's the torturer, but also, weirdly, the figure Winston initially looked to for understanding. It shows how the party twists everything, even that need for connection. And his hint that he was once like Winston, they got me a long time ago, adds another layer.
What about Goldstein and the book? Are they real?
Probably not. They serve vital symbolic roles. Goldstein is the eternal enemy, the focus for hate. The book explains the system, but O'Brien implies, and the sources agree, they're likely party fabrications.
Why create them then?
An external enemy justifies perpetual war and repression. An imaginary opposition gives dissidents false hope, makes them reveal themselves. It's the party controlling even its own opposition.
In Charrington.
His dual role is key. Seems like a harmless link to the past, offers a safe space, then bam, he's thought police. He represents the total infiltration, the impossibility of finding genuine refuge or trust.
Then you have minor figures like Syme, the Newspeak expert.
Vaporized for being too intelligent. Orthodoxy means not thinking, O'Brien says. Syme thought too much.
And Parsons, the loyal idiot who turns himself in for thought crime in his sleep and thinks the party is right to arrest him.
Yeah, they show the spectrum, those consumed for being too smart, those consumed by blind loyalty, different ways the party uses and discards people.
A major target for the party, besides thought, is human connection itself, isn't it? Love, sex, family.
Absolutely. They systematically try to destroy those bonds because they compete with loyalty to the party. Family ties are weakened kids spying on parents.
And the sexual puritanism. That's a deliberate tool, too.
Definitely. Repress natural desire, channel that energy into party worship and hatred for enemies. Julia's junior anti-sex league sash is the perfect symbol of that outward conformity. Sex is just for procreation, stripped of pleasure or intimacy.
Yet Winston and Julia do find moments of real connection, briefly.
Fleeting moments. Their physical intimacy becomes tenderness. Their dream of a normal life in that room. Buying little things, even nature, like the thrush singing in the Golden Country, represents something free, untainted.
But those moments are precisely what the party targets.
Exactly. Any loyalty outside the party is a threat, and ultimately those connections are crushed. Winston's betrayal of Julia in Room 101 is the final, brutal destruction of that human bond. Loyalty to Big Brother replaces everything.
Which brings us to Orwell's warning, and why this book still feels so relevant. It was written right after World War II, right? 1949?
Right in that period. The rise of the U.S. and USSR, the Cold War starting, the Iron Curtain falling. Orwell had seen totalitarianism, fascism, and Stalinism up close.
And his own politics are important here. He was a democratic socialist.
Yes, the sources quote him saying his work was against totalitarianism and for democratic socialism, as I understand it.
So 1984, like Animal Farm, wasn't an attack on socialism itself.
No, it was a warning against authoritarianism, specifically the kind he saw in Stalin's USSR, which claimed to be socialist. He was showing the wrong way how revolutionary ideals could be twisted into oppression if power becomes absolute.
His experiences in Spain really shaped that view, seeing the infighting, the purges, the lies on his own side.
Absolutely. It made him deeply suspicious of ideological rigidity and suppression of dissent from any quarter. He faced boycotts for criticizing Stalin. His target was totalitarianism, whatever label it wore. He stressed it could happen anywhere.
And we have to remember, in the Cold War, the book was sometimes used as just anti-socialist propaganda, which wasn't his intention.
Right. It's a broader warning. And those themes, they hit hard today.
The surveillance aspect, especially.
It feels incredibly current. Mass government surveillance, corporate data mining, social media tracking, facial recognition. The examples in the sources are spot on. Are we building a kind of diffuse surveillance society? Different methods than Oceania, maybe, but similar chilling potential.
In the Ministry of Truth stuff, rewriting history, doublethink.
It echoes so much in discussions about fake news, disinformation, political polarization, where people seem to live in different realities, the whole post-truth idea. That source mentioning people prioritizing belief over facts, arguing unfairly, it feels very familiar.
The sources also mentioned that toxic cocktail of cynicism and credulity, distrusting mainstream news but believing random online stuff.
That's a perfect environment for the kind of information manipulation Orwell described. Even how terms like thought police get thrown around in political arguments today shows how deeply these concepts resonate.
So the ultimate message, it's about the fragility of truth, memory, freedom.
Profoundly. It's a warning that totalitarianism isn't just a historical event. It's a constant potential threat in any society. A source called the book a durable compendium of how human psychology, our biases, our compromises can enable oppressive power structures.
A guide to what to watch out for. Orwell wrote it for the future.
Yeah, his point was that preserving freedom, democracy, truth, it takes conscious effort. Vigilance is not the default state.
The party's power grows when opposition weakens, when people give in to cynicism or distraction.
Exactly. The fight is ongoing.
So for you, the listener, navigating today's world, competing narratives, data everywhere, what does Orwell make you think about?
Maybe it's about questioning more, being wary of easy answers, recognizing our own capacity for self-deception, and maybe trying to see opponents not just as wrong, but possibly honest, as Orwell himself struggled with.
In a world where even basic facts feel contested, maybe Winston's 2 + 2 + 4 isn't just math.
Maybe it's a moral imperative, a reminder that seeking and defending truth, however hard, is fundamental to staying human against forces that want to control our minds.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into 1984 and exploring the insights from the material you shared.